I don't love my grandchildren. I don't hate them. I just feel nothing. It's not a confession I ever thought I'd say out loud. You grow up thinking that love is automatic, that family guarantees a certain kind of feeling, that once you become a grandparent, something switches on. Tenderness, pride, that glowing warmth people talk about. But for me, it never did. I smiled when they were born, held them like I was supposed to, went to the birthday parties and handed out gifts. I sat through school plays and football games, clapped, cheered, asked the right questions. But deep down, there was just silence, like I was watching a movie without sound. I told myself it would come later, that maybe I was just tired or distracted or not used to babies anymore. But the years passed and that feeling never showed up. They got older, and I got better at pretending. I knew how to say the right things, how to look invested. I'd lean in when they showed me drawings, nod along to stories about classmates I never remembered the names of. I became skilled at being the grandfather people expected me to be. But behind the smile, there was always this emptiness. And I used to think it made me broken, maybe it still does, but I've stopped trying to explain it away. I've stopped blaming them or blaming myself. I think something in me closed off years ago. Not in one moment, not because of one thing, but gradually, quietly. Maybe it started when my own children grew up and moved out. Maybe even before that. I became someone who functioned well, reliable, present, good on paper. But somewhere along the way, the thread of feeling loosened. And when the grandchildren came, I realized I no longer had the part of me that was supposed to come alive. I wish I could say I tried harder. I wish I could say I fought to feel something. But the truth is, I didn't know how. I waited, hoped it would come naturally. It didn't. And now, when I see their faces, I just feel this dull ache. Not because of what they are, but because of what I'm not. I don't dislike them. I don't resent them. But I don't love them. Not the way I'm supposed to. And I know that makes me the villain in some stories. I know what this sounds like. But I'm not looking for redemption. I'm just tired of pretending. I'm 74. That matters, not because it's old. Plenty of people live longer. But because somewhere around 70, things get quieter in a way that no one warns you about. The phone rings less. The calendar clears. People stop expecting things from you, and you start vanishing in small, polite ways. It's not tragic. It's just slow. And in that silence, you begin to see things for what they were, not what you told yourself they were. I used to think I was a good man, steady, responsible, always showed up. I worked at the same job for 41 years. I paid off the mortgage. I remembered birthdays. I stayed married. And that used to be enough. Enough to call yourself decent. Enough to build a quiet life on. But now I sit in this house, this clean, quiet house, and I see how much of me was built on habit. Not choice, not love, just maintenance. I kept things running. I never learned how to keep them alive. My wife, she tried. She was softer than me, warmer. She had that glow in her when the grandkids were around, the kind that made you feel safe just by sitting near her. She'd kneel on the carpet, play board games, braid hair with shaking fingers. I'd watch from my chair, smile when they looked over. It looked like a scene from a life I wasn't quite part of. I think she knew. She never said anything, but I think she felt the gap, too. The way I'd drift off during conversations, the way I'd retreat to the garage or busy myself with little repairs. fixing what wasn't broken, avoiding what was. And now she's gone. 3 years ago, quietly, in her sleep. I held her hand that morning and realized I hadn't really looked at her in months. I don't mean glanced. I mean looked, noticed, let myself feel who she still was. I'd been too busy surviving a routine, and when she left, the silence stopped being peaceful. It started echoing. That's when it started breaking open, not all at once, but piece by piece. Her absence was louder than anything she ever said, and in that loudness, I started hearing everything I'd muted for decades, including the truth about me, about the way I looked at those kids, about the way I lived, about how much of my life was shaped by obligation dressed as love. I used to think I was just a man who didn't show emotion easily, that some people are simply made quieter, more private. My father was like that, stern, efficient, his feelings folded so tightly they left no creases. He believed in doing what needed to be done. Love to him was a roof over your head and food on the table. Not words, not softness. I grew up thinking that was normal, and in a way it worked. I built a life around that same principle: provide, protect, persist. I didn't question it. I went to work even when I was exhausted. I showed up for parent-teacher meetings. I fixed leaking sinks and drove through snowstorms to make sure there was milk in the fridge. I thought that was love. Maybe it was, in the only language I knew, but it was never enough to make me feel close to anyone. My kids were polite with me, careful. I didn't notice that until later. They'd come to me when they needed help with homework, or a ride, or money, but they went to their mother when they were scared, or sad, or just needed to talk. And that dynamic never changed. It simply passed on. When the grandkids were born, I saw that same caution in them. They'd run to their grandmother, collapse into her lap. With me, they waited to be invited. They watched my face to see if they were welcome. I never raised my voice. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't open. I didn't know how to let them in. I remember one Christmas, the youngest had made me something, a little clay turtle. His hands were shaking when he gave it to me. I said thank you. I smiled. I placed it on the mantel, and then I moved on. I didn't kneel down. I didn't ask why he made a turtle or tell him I'd keep it forever. I just moved on. That moment still comes back to me sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth or closing the blinds. It comes back like a whisper. Why didn't you kneel down? It was a Sunday morning when everything finally cracked. Nothing special, no big moment. Just me, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold, watching the window. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that's too full of things you've been avoiding. There was a birthday party later that day. One of the grandkids, turning 10. I was supposed to go, supposed to smile, bring the gift, take the photo. I sat there thinking about it, trying to summon the usual mask, and I couldn't. Not because I was angry, not because I was tired, but because for the first time, I didn't want to pretend anymore. I looked around the kitchen, the same place I'd sat in for 40 years, reading the paper, listening to the radio, living my quiet little life. And I realized I couldn't name the last time I'd felt present. Not dutiful, not efficient, present. My eyes landed on that school photo again, still stuck to the fridge. Same autumn leaves, same careful part in the hair, and I felt this pressure in my chest. Not grief, not guilt, exactly. Just a sudden unbearable awareness of how far I'd drifted from real connection, not just with the boy in the photo, with everyone, with myself. I got up, walked into the living room, sat in my wife's old chair, and just stayed there for hours, No TV, no distractions, just me and the weight of everything I hadn't let myself feel. That was the moment. The one I think I'll remember more clearly than any birthday or milestone. Not because it was dramatic, but because something in me stopped holding. The dam didn't burst. It just quietly gave way. And I sat there, finally, as the man I'd spent decades avoiding. The truth I came to, sitting in that chair, was quiet. It didn't hit me like lightning. It settled slowly, like dust on old shelves. And it was this. I had confused being dependable with being alive. I had spent a lifetime doing what was expected, and almost none of it required me to feel. That's what made it so easy. That's what made it so dangerous. I thought if I showed up, paid the bills, remembered the dates, I'd done my part. I thought love was a set of actions you could perform like steps in a manual. And maybe that's enough for some. But for me, it turned out to be a shield, a way to stay distant while looking present, a way to avoid risk. Because real love, the kind that breaks you open, the kind that kneels down and looks a child in the eyes, that kind of love demands something I never learned how to give. Softness, vulnerability, presence without control. And the longer I avoided it, the harder it became to even recognize what I was missing. That's why the house feels so cold now, even in summer. It's not the absence of people. It's the absence of warmth I never let myself give. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. That's the part that stings the most. Not the missed parties, or the stiff conversations, or the clay turtle on the mantel. It's the quiet knowing that I had it in me, somewhere. The capacity to love better. And I just never reached for it. I let time carry me like a river I assumed I understood. But now the rivers run dry, and all that's left is this quiet, cracked riverbed. I look at it, and I understand it now. Every bend, every stone. But there's no water left to shape it. I'm not telling you this because I want your pity. I don't. And I'm not looking for forgiveness. There's no one left to give it. I'm telling you this because maybe, just maybe, you're younger than me, and you still have time. I want you to stop for a second and listen to your life. Really listen, not the calendar, not the schedule, not the noise of being busy. Listen to what your life feels like. When your child shows you a drawing, do you look at it or do you see it? When your partner speaks, do you hear them or are you just waiting to respond? When someone hugs you, do you let yourself melt into it or are you already thinking about what's next? I used to think I was present. I was just good at going through the motions. There's a difference, a big one, and no one teaches you how to feel that difference until it's too late. I'm not here to preach. I've got nothing to sell you. I just want you to hear this before the silence gets too loud, before the house gets too empty, before you find yourself sitting where I am, whispering truths to a room that no longer holds the people who once waited for your attention. There's still time for you. I hope you know that. I hope you stop waiting for some perfect moment to feel what's already right in front of you. Because love, real love, doesn't wait. It just needs to be let in. And it's not a grand gesture. It's kneeling down. It's asking why they made a turtle. It's noticing before it's too late. I'm not looking for a second chance. That's not what this is. Life doesn't work like that. You don't get to rewind. You just carry. You carry the things you said too late, the touches you didn't return, the silences that lasted too long. And then one day, it's just you. In the same house, the same chair, the same routine. But it all feels different, heavier somehow, like everything you didn't say has settled into the air. I don't expect anything to change. I won't suddenly become the warm grandfather they remember with sparkles in their eyes. That story's not mine. I've made my peace with that, mostly. But there's still a part of me that wonders who I could have been, not in some grand, heroic way, just in the small human ways. A man who asked more questions, who listened longer, who kneeled down when a child held out a clay turtle. And maybe that's what this all comes down to. Not regret in the dramatic sense, just the quiet, dull ache of having missed something that was always there. A kind of love that asked so little, and I still managed to miss it. So if you're hearing this, take a moment tonight. Don't perform. Don't impress. Just look at the people in your life like it might be the last time. Not out of fear, out of respect, out of presence. That's all I have left to offer. No advice, no wisdom, just this stillness, this room, this truth. And it's enough. Not because it fixes anything, but because it finally exists outside of me. I said it. After all these years, I said it. I don't know what they'll say about me when I'm gone. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll just be the man who sat in the same chair every Sunday, who brought the gifts and smiled for the camera, who was there but never quite in it. Maybe they'll remember the turtle on the mantle and wonder why I never mentioned it again. Or maybe I'll fade the way quiet people do, gently, without resistance. I used to think that would be enough. A clean exit, no mess, no drama. But now I understand that disappearing isn't the same as being at peace. Peace comes when you've told the truth, even if it's ugly, even if it's too late to change anything. So this is mine, my final bit of honesty, offered not to be understood, but simply to be real. I didn't love my grandchildren, not because they weren't lovable, but because I never learned how to be open in the ways that matter. I see that now, and if I could go back, I wouldn't buy more gifts or show up to more parties. I'd just kneel down, look them in the eyes, let them see me without the armor. That's all. Just that. A little less silence between us, but I can't go back. So I sit here, in this chair, with the fading light brushing against the kitchen tiles, and I let it all settle. The years, the choices, the absence. It's quiet, but it's not empty. Not anymore. Because now the truth is in the room with me. And that somehow feels like a kind of ending I can live with.